Good morning, everyone. Mr. Clerk, do we have quorum?
Mr. Chair, there is quorum.
Great. Good to see you all. After a month away, thank you to the Vice Chair for handling things last month. We'll try to continue on in our demonstration of superlative committee work that we do here at Heritage. So we'll start off by following the agenda. You'll see the first thing is to approve the agenda that you have in front of you. Sorry? Yeah. There is an addendum that is quite relevant, so updated information from two of our files, 412 Regent Street and 82 Brock Street. If we come to those items in the agenda and you need time to digest it, if you haven't already, it was only available last night on the website. We could take if you just ask if you need time to digest before we discuss. If you don't have time to catch up before we get there, we could take a brief recess to do that, seeing as it's last minute. Are there any, I need a mover and a seconder for the agenda, and then we'll see if there's any changes. So moved by Catherine, seconded by Paul. And does anyone suggest any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we will vote on the agenda as printed in the package with the addendum, including an extra briefing and 2 items of correspondence, which are basically what I just mentioned. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next thing is the minutes from last meeting. So we need a mover and a seconder. This is from March 1st, moved by Dawn, seconded by Catherine. Are there any errors or omissions? Yes, Catherine.
I wasn't here last time, and I'm on the down as present. I had sent my regrets. So anything. So I'm down as being present, but there's also some comments that I made. So I don't know who it was who made them, but it wasn't me.
I was not here either, and nor was James. So I guess we need to actually get a new mover then for the minutes because you weren't present, and then we need to make that correction. So we'll start again. Who would like to move these minutes? And you'll still be allowed to make the correction. It has to be someone that was present. So moved by Don, seconded by Paul. And I'll just review the tape too. Yeah. So James has said he's going to review the tape to see who made those comments and make that correction. And of course, the absence should be updated. There's also, Don, you had something as well?
Just a minor thing on page 4, about the middle of the page, it refers to a Mr. Tilney, who I can't identify. I think it should have been Mr. Downey. Unless somebody here knows of a Mr. Tilney, I think it should be Downey, Bruce Downey.
I believe the committee clerk is familiar with Mr. Downey, so when he reviews the tape, he'll be able to make that correction as well. Paul.
On page 8, the 3rd paragraph, it said, Mr. Carl reiterated that for the culture appropriate. I don't remember talking about guidelines. I do remember speaking about this. I support the culturally appropriate events, and I also believe that it highlights the city hall areas that other people wouldn't normally see. So I encourage people that it was a good idea to do this lighting. So I don't remember ever saying that the guidelines regarding light projections.
James might follow up with you after the meeting, just make sure he gets the wording right, but he's got the basis of it now. Any other? Yes, Peter.
what Mr. Carl was referring to was an interesting discussion which was kicked off, I think, in part because I made some comments that I didn't wish to see the City Hall Disneyfied. And several people around this table, as reported here, commented on the in response, in contradistinction to what I was saying. And I wouldn't mind my comments having been recorded because they were the only things that, it was the only comment I made at the meeting which I thought was the least bit significant.
The clerk has taken note of that omission and will insert that. And if you want to help him with the exact wording of what you said, because he wasn't here, you can go ahead and do that after the meeting.
I don't have a good remembrance, but the tape will be better than I am.
Okay, he'll watch it. He'll follow the tape then. So James will have a bit of follow-up work to do on these minutes, and then the corrected minutes will be part of the package that goes to council in 2 weeks. And it'll be on the website, so you'll be able to review it on the website when it's updated, and let them know that if there's anything further. Any other issues? So do we still approve the minutes? Yep. So we're still going to approve the minutes with those corrections, which can be confirmed at a later time, the exact wording of the corrections. So all those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Disclosure of pecuniary interest? Yes, Paul.
I have a pecuniary interest with 78th Fifth Field Company Lane, file number P18007-2017 and 008-2017, as well as the next one, P18009-2017 and P18070-2016, as I'm an employee of Queen's University.
So that's the first three items under business, statutory business. And I understand you'll be leaving the chambers and we will be notifying you when we're done with those business items so you can come back. Any other disclosures? Okay, moving on to presentations. We don't have any presentations or delegations, but we do have a briefing under business item 7. From Julie Fawcett. It's in the addendum. She's the manager of cultural marketing, and she's here to speak to us regarding temporary installation on Brock Street related to the sesquicentennial. Go ahead.
I wanted to speak with you today because I've been working with Kingston Accommodation Partners and Tourism Kingston for quite a while on cultural tourism initiatives, and I'm sure some of you around the table are familiar with those. I've been recently approached by Kingston Accommodation Partners to work on a placemaking initiative to be part of their sesquicentennial campaign to drive visitors to Kingston this year. As many of you probably know, this past year, 2016, was the most successful tourism year that we've had yet for a number of reasons. And this year, there's even more reasons to celebrate Kingston's cultural heritage due to the 150th anniversary. So we ended up getting together and looking at examples from other cities for inspiration to see what we could use in Kingston. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this lovely sign in Amsterdam. It has a beautiful backdrop of a heritage building, and it says, "I am Amsterdam." It's one of their most iconic photos taken in that city. Charlottetown has another, they actually did this in 2016 as well, and it's also very iconic, a beautiful just series of red numbers. And many of you are probably familiar with the Toronto sign, which was actually erected for the Pan Am Games and was so successful that they're working on making it a permanent installation. So we were trying to think of something that we could do that would be similar in Kingston, but would be accessible, that would be something that they could actually, that CAP could actually use as part of a destination marketing strategy to use with digital and social media as well. The unique selling point for the Kingston brand for tourism currently is Fresh Made Daily, which is around celebrating the creators and curators of Kingston. And it really emphasizes the importance of local history and culture as the key driver for visitation. So what CAP has come up with their agency is to look at some sort of a sign that would be, "You are the eye in Kingston." So this is a very, very preliminary mock-up that they were thinking about. They would really like to have something placed around First Capital Place for a variety of reasons, mostly because it's very high traffic and it's an iconic Kingston landmark. So right now what we're working on is finding the best placement for this sign. Currently, the placement that you'll see in this photo, you would actually have to stand on the other side of Brock Street to take the picture to get the full size in. So we're actually looking at maybe moving it up a little bit and making it a little bit smaller. This would be accompanied by a fairly robust marketing campaign around taking your picture with the hashtag I in Kingston. There would be social media, digital media, blog posts, etc. For this sign. The staff at Cultural Services and myself did an extensive kind of look at the area and felt that this kind of area on Brock Street would really be the only place in the area that would be accessible and would work for visitors who are visiting the market and also visitors who are along Ontario Street. So the partnership is really, Kingston Accommodation Partners will pay for the design, fabrication, placement, and disposal of the sign. Right now we're looking at a temporary installation that would really only be here probably for the summer, possibly till the end of September. The CAP will pay for all of the digital marketing campaigns to drive traffic and awareness around it. And what we're doing today, myself, is facilitating the approvals and the placement of the installation. Questions? Councillor Shell, yes.
Just a thought, as when you first see it and you go, oh, they didn't know how to spell Kingston, is you could have, would there be space for people to stand there and create the eye?
So that is the idea of the sign. I as well thought it might be a little awkward because if there's no one standing there. So they're working on solutions to possibly put maybe like footprints, or also have maybe some sort of signage around it that would say, "Be the eye in Kingston," and also they would have some photos taken in advance. They actually have a picture of someone standing kind of like this in the middle that they would be able to use to promote it. I think you're right. I think it's a little tricky to figure out if you don't have some prompts. So they're working on some prompts on site to help people figure that out. I think it's a very clever campaign, but it'll need a little bit of massaging.
Peter.
The idea, I think, is a very good one. I kind of suspect with as many institutions of higher education in Kingston that we should be able to spell. But my main comment is that is it really important in the summer to convince everyone from the south of the Far East Second Parallel that we're the Great White North? I mean, it would seem to me that there's a lake out there which is a beautiful color. The color of the sign, I think, is underwhelming in the extreme, and we're not promoting hockey in July, and we didn't have much snow this winter. So I really wonder if we couldn't come up with a color that is more interesting and more fetching than something which refers to a misperception of this place by everyone too far south of here.
Paul.
Julia, I think this is an awesome idea. Maybe one suggestion for that missing eye is maybe an outline, sort of step back so people do see it but not. The question I have is sort of along what Peter said, is instead of being like everybody else, I see Amsterdam had different color. Mm-hmm. Is there any way we can make it look sort of limestone-ish for the buildings? Also, is there going to be lighting for the nighttime? Will it be illuminated so that people at nighttime will want to take a picture or something that could be seen? So
currently we have not budgeted, or the CAP has not budgeted for lighting for a number of reasons. One being not necessarily the cost. They are looking at, they're getting quotes from fabricators and looking at iridescent paint or coverings that might kind of help it glow. but I guess we just thought that there is going to be a new illumination, as you're well aware, of City Hall, and we didn't want to be competing with that. So I think at this point, hopefully with the long summer months, people could still take a picture with a flash, but they are looking at some sort of iridescent glow. And just to the point of the color, we actually have been talking about some ways to maybe activate the sign with different colors, and I agree that the white was a mock-up that is a little bit plain, and so I think it will be up to us to make sure that we get some different options to make sure that it's works well in the space but doesn't kind of fade away into the background.
Catherine?
Just a question about the font.
Yes.
Has there been any discussion about an appropriate font?
So the font that's currently in the Fresh Made Daily logo, which is the brand identity for Kingston as the tourism brand, I should have actually brought it. It actually has some spikes in it, and we actually thought it would be a hazard if we created a font that was like that as a sign. We thought people might actually hurt themselves on it. So currently they're trying to use something that's very smooth lines, which is why I think that font is some sort of an Arial. So I think they're just looking more at a font that would be easy to read and that wouldn't have any sharp edges for hazards at this point.
Sherman.
Thank you. I too think it's a great idea, and love the concept of trying to get us to interface with it. And I just wondered about kids and how huggable it is. If it is in any way, and I was thinking, is it mountable? Too big probably to climb on top, probably not safe to climb on top. Thought about, could there be stone in it? And often we think of Kingston, and could you put stone in any way? And maybe if there is an E that's made of stone that's tipped over at the end, that's climbable. If there's something that could include, wondered, family, like I get the I bit, but stone and huggable, because we're getting into the letters. Just wondered if you considered that.
So that's a great point, and the original idea that some of the other signs are used, they are climbable, which gets into certain liability issues. So we were looking at potentially the depth of the letters would be 2 feet wide, but that would actually encourage people to climb on it. So we've actually decided from a legal and liability perspective to make them thinner so that people could maybe interact with it in different ways, but not necessarily climbing. I do agree that that idea of being huggable and smooth, which would also address the font with these sharp edges. So I think we have to be really careful with the material, but we also need to keep in mind that it is a temporary installation, and so the budget considerations for this type of material could go from $20,000 to $65,000 based on fiberglass or wood. So they're trying to do something, I think, that will be safe and attractive, but potentially not encouraging climbing. Yeah.
On that note, personal anecdotes. I just was on vacation with my kids, and we went to the Norfolk, Virginia Zoo, and I noticed 2 things. Apart from all the animals that the kids loved, they loved the climbable bronze statues of a lion and a couple other, and all the kids loved them. In fact, it was very difficult to get on them because you had to wait your turn. And also the cutout, the ones where they have animals with the cutout faces and you put your face through and take a picture. So that's kind of what this eye thing is doing. I think it's a great idea. I think that part is sound. The climbable part is very important because if it can be climbed, it will be climbed, and whenever children are around, they get rambunctious and they will do whatever is possible to be done to the sign, they will do to it. So that bronze lion was very worn down from lots of use, and so it needs to be also solid materials that will withstand multiple children climbing all over it all summer. So I'm sure you'll bring that into your thinking. The bronze line, of course, is rounded. It was all rounded edges, so it wasn't dangerous. So that's all I had to say about that. I know Paul had another question.
You were talking about disposal. What is the plan for disposal? The reason I asked that is I'm sure someone would love to take that off your hand and use it somewhere, or have it as a momentum, maybe possibly a raffle to help cover some of the cost, or something where an organization would love to take that as a part of their heritage. So what is the plan of disposal? Just destroying it, or could that be a possibility?
Well, we certainly want to do what we can do to be sustainable. So I think if it survives the elements in the summer, we would certainly, and I think that would be up to CAP. I know they had talked about maybe even some of their partners being able to use it afterwards for special events. I think another thing that we're still working on the fabrication is also trying to make it so that the letters actually click together, so it's easier to transport. So instead of having to have a flatbed to put the entire installation on, that you could actually take it apart and then maybe make it more portable. So I think that's a really good point, and once we have kind of what that looks like and what the materials are, then I think we should make sure that we address that publicly. I also just wanted to mention that as a civil servant, I want to make sure that safety is of utmost importance. So, which is why we're really making sure that we're either having something that's incredibly safe for climbing or not possible for climbing. I have kids as well, and they do climb everything. So, we'll try to make sure that that's why I'm involved, because we're trying to make it as safe as possible.
Catherine.
I just wanted to say that it's following up on your comment that the kids will climb it. The kids will climb it. So it would just seem to me to be more sensible to recognize that and to make it as safe as possible. I mean, and think that how do we keep them away from this is probably not the way to go, but to actually acknowledge that it's going to be climbed on.
Excellent point.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck with the next phase in the planning.
Thank you.
No? No. Okay. So we're moving right along here. That was briefing 7A. So back in the agenda, we're at 8, business. There are several sections as we do deal with every month. The first one is cultural heritage, which is empty this month, as is policy development and implementation. Heritage assets is just what's in the report at the end. Yeah. The heritage assets is also empty. The working group that deals with that does have a report at the end of the agenda. The statutory business is next. So there's the first 3 items. Paul, you've got a conflict, so we'll contact you when we're done. And the first one is an application for a permit, 78 Fifth Field Company Lane and 60 Union Street, file numbers 007 and 008. And there you see the recommendations there, and staff has some graphics here, and I guess, Ryan, you'll introduce the items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this application includes 2 buildings on Queen's main campus. They've been rolled together in one overview, but I'll walk you through the 2 applications here. They are located south of Union Street in the main Queen's campus. The first building is Fleming Hall, which you can see on the screen, is located on Fifth Field Company Lane. And it's a 3-story, oh, there we go. It's a 3-story limestone building with 2-story wings clad in limestone. The building was originally constructed in 1904 with upper stories and wings added in 1934. The building is included in the Queen's University Heritage Agreement with the City of Kingston under the tools under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. The application before you is a series of masonry repairs to the exterior of the building. These include repairs to the main front entrance, which you see here, including the arch, name stone, and steps. There are significant repairs, There are significant repairs to the large octagonal chimney, including a cap, and there are repairs to I don't know, a picture of it, to the base wall and parapet walls around the boiler room addition. and overall pointing and repairs to the exterior masonry of the building throughout. The second building that's before you for alteration is Nickel Hall, which is located right on Union Street. This building is a 2.5-story steel building clad in limestone. It was originally constructed in 1912, with additions added in 1930 and 1961. The application before the committee is a series of similar masonry repairs to the exterior of the building. These include repairs to several of these buttresses you see on the right side of the screen, as well as repairs to a large stone chimney, which you can see in this picture, including removing portions of the Greynex paneling that is currently around it. There are repairs to the main front entrance, including the name arch. There are various wall locations throughout the building that are to be repaired as well, including some roofing, flashing, and siding of the small mechanical penthouse on the rear portion of the roof. All damaged and cracked stones will be repaired and replaced as needed. The masonry works are to be done in accordance with the city's heritage policy. The limestone cladding, main entrance, and substantial octagonal chimney at Fleming Hall are significant heritage attributes. Similarly, the main front entrance of Nickel Hall, including the stone cladding, the detailed buttresses, cornices, and lintels, are again key features in maintaining the cultural heritage of this building. Best practices in heritage conservation would encourage repairing existing character elements instead of replacing them. And according to the applicant, the repairs have been undertaken to these buildings over the years with limited success. The applicant has assessed the entirety of these structures. There are detailed reports in your agenda package for both of these buildings, and is proposing an aggressive and comprehensive restoration plan for both Fleming and Nickel Halls. The applicant has noted that any stones that can be reused will be salvaged and reintegrated into the buildings. The proposed works to repair the stone wall, chimneys, stairs will improve the longevity of these buildings by stabilizing these features and restricting water penetration into the building. The limestone surfaces of these buildings are not only heritage attributes, but are also a significant part of the identity of Queen's University and the City of Kingston. We circulated this application to internal agencies. The building department notes that a building permit will be required for much of this work. Engineering notes that an encroachment permit may be necessary if any of the works are include placing objects on the city right-of-way. The fire department only asks that the applicants ensure that adequate exiting is maintained throughout the construction. And our public works forestry staff wish to remind the applicants that they encourage and implement mitigation measures to avoid injuring and damaging trees that are in close proximity to this work. So this application was circulated to committee members, and the comments that we received are included in your agenda package. And Mr. Chair, given our review of the submitted application and pertinent legislation, we recommend conditional approval of both these applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So we proceed first with questions only from members of the committee to staff or to the applicant or the applicant's agent. Yes, Sherman.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. With respect to the metal cladding that's coming off of the, I guess, chimney section, is it going to be replaced? And the chimney capping, to what extent is it? I noticed there are a number of levels, different stone dimensions around that chimney. Do you know the extent of the cap that is proposed on the chimney?
Mr. Chair, I did fail to mention that the agent for the applicant, Mr. Paul Everett, is here and was the author of these reports. Perhaps he can better answer these questions. I'm just bringing up his report now.
If you can just come up to this microphone over here, turn it on, and so there's questions about the capping and the cladding, I believe.
Good morning. My name is Paul Everett. The matter of the chimney at Fleming Hall, the intention, well, you've got the chimneys at Nickel on the screen. I'll speak to them first. There are 2 stone chimneys there, completely separate. And at one point in time, the Granex panels completely covered that area that you see with metal louvers and extended to the top of the 2 chimneys. Part of the Granex panels was taken off, the metal louvers were put on, many chimneys, flues were taken down, and it was left like this. I think the impact of the chimneys is lost, and I would like to remove as much of the Granex panels as possible to restore the appearance of the chimneys to the building, with your blessing. You already see 1 flue rising up. If we see another 4 feet of flue, I don't think it will really change the appearance of the flue, but it will restore the appearance of the chimneys. Those 2 chimneys, particularly the one on the right, which is to the east, are in severe distress. The one to the right is actually leaning maybe 4 inches towards the roof, and the one to the left is badly fractured. So the intention is to restore somewhat, because we have to take the chimneys down to rebuild them. There's no question about that. So while we're doing that, why don't we restore some of the appearance of the chimneys on the facade? And as you saw from Ryan's photograph, there's no really good place on campus, other than if you're like me up on top of a roof taking this photo. There's no really good place that you can see the chimneys. I just think it's something that's worth doing while we're there. For the matter of the chimney at Fleming Hall, I would like to cap the whole chimney, but I cannot. There are still chimney swifts coming each year to roost in it. And we're working with the ministry on that. We're going through all the right approvals. And so what we will do, instead of completely capping the top of the chimney, is we'll cap the top stone, but you'll only see a 2-inch strip of lead-coated copper coming around the edge. I want to stop as much of the snow from melting down through all those stone and masonry units at the top to make it last a lot longer. That top course is a brand new course. The courses below it are probably original, by all indications original, and they are moving a lot. So we have to take a lot of this chimney down, rebuild it, and then I'll cap the top stones with your permission to try and keep as much of the water out of the stonework as possible. If you look at that photo, excuse me, if you look to the left edge, you can actually see that it has pushed out multiple inches, and I gave you a calculation in my report. It may be 6 inches on that side that it's pushed out and less on the other. So we'll take it down roughly to the roof level, and then we'll take a lot of other stones below that and get them repaired. So that's our game plan.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Don?
Yes, well, I had the opportunity to visit these sites and certainly very impressed by the care and attention that is being taken, which is all very good. In the case of, I guess, particularly Nickel Hall, but some of the others as well, where there are buttresses that are in rather poor condition. I guess I wasn't clear whether those buttresses were original or whether they were added, and if there is concern about how they're integrated with the original wall if they are added. Can you answer that?
There's 3 generic types of buttress on that building from my standpoint as the project manager to get this building repaired. There are the buttresses at the front elevation of the building. The one that would be to the right of the main entrance photograph that you see there, that one fell over in 1991. The rest of them, including that one on the front elevation of the building, have been substantially tied back with Syntec anchors over 1 inch in diameter, some of them over 6 feet in length. I think there's a few that are 8 feet in length. So the front buttresses are substantially repaired and stabilized. The 2 at the back that we looked at, the southeast and southwest, They were always in much better shape, and since 1991, when a major restoration of the pointing work was done, they have progressively gotten out of hand. And so we're going to take the top halves of those two buttresses down and put them back up. Now, the question, are they original or not? They're original. When the repairs were done, and I won't name by whom, but when the repairs were done in the past, not just 1991, but there were several other repairs, the mason doing the work would find a broken stone where the buttress joined the main wall and replace the portion that broke, not the portion that tied back into the wall. So it leaves just a sheer control joint running straight up the side of the buttress. So we will take out those improperly inserted half stones and we'll put in whole stones that tie back into the wall, and we'll stabilize them. Now, Chris Roney is working on that for me. As I think most of you folks know, he's my partner in these projects. We work closely. And this one, for example, you see up here, we have to take that down. The third set of buttresses, just to make sure that we cover them all, are the buttresses that are on the annex to the rear of the building, which would be to the south. We're repairing all of those. They're also in distress, but they're in distress for completely different reasons. They're in distress because a building was added behind them and they don't tie to them. They're just like a fixed onto the face in a sense, but they're original as well.
I also saw Peter.
This is a question which relates to these buildings, not to the specifics of the repairs, and it relates to my ignorance. These are both buildings which have an older component and then an additional component to it. And my question is, under the Ontario Heritage Act, does the same consideration apply to what I regard as the heritage part of these buildings and what I regard as the, the more modern and much less interesting and historically significant aspects or parts of these buildings? Are they handled in the same way or not?
Maybe Mr. Leary, Ryan, you could.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This agreement is set up in a way that only specific buildings on Queen's campus are included in the agreement. Saying that, however, as the member pointed out, portions of the buildings are newer than other portions of the buildings. So we would look at it as we would for any heritage building that has a later addition onto a heritage building. So the impacts associated with altering that later addition could be such that it would decrease or take away from the heritage features of the older part of the building. So we do look at them all when they relate to these buildings in that manner. But certainly, I think there's a built-in sort of allowability for certain changes on later additions that you may not want to consider on an old stone portion of the building. So they are considered slightly different, but they are still wrapped under the same legislation in this particular case. So.
Yeah, and just to highlight one thing he said, the reference point is the heritage attributes that are listed in the agreement. Everything in the the whole building is included if it's included. The whole building as it stands, but in reference to those heritage attributes.
I was going to add this as a comment, but maybe it is a question, that I see this as a great learning opportunity to, this is incredible information, like a record of a change, and wondered if there's a way in which there could be a follow-up that actually almost like takes the pictures of all of these once repaired, and that there be a comment that we can learn about or learn from that is, if it's water damage, if it's structural change, whatever, is there something we could learn about that could help us take care, anybody that is a owner of other similar masonry buildings, help us take care of these properties? As my comment was about deterioration, it would be great to have a record such as this of the finished work and to see how the changes affect the quality and the value of it. So ultimately, I just wondered, how can we record this process so that we can learn from it?
Mr. Leary?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's an excellent idea, and we always encourage the applicants to contact staff when the work is done, and we go out and take pictures of finished products. And I'm certain that the agent who's doing the work would be, I'm sure, willing to take pictures, but I'll leave. I won't speak for him.
Yes, Councillor Shaw.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. In our property standards, we now are asking people who own limestone buildings not to allow ivy to grow on them. Is there any relationship between some of the crumbling and the extensive ivy that's growing on the buildings, in your opinion?
There's certainly some fascinating studies about ivy, and there's a wonderful English one that looks at that in great detail and says which ivies, which stones, which elevations, which exposures to wind and rain, and really nails it. However, I'll give you an example. There is a photograph in my report, which you have, which shows the back wall of the Fleming Hall parapets on the boiler room. It's covered in ivy. Not one piece of that ivy is in the completely open mortar joints. Not one piece of the ivy is behind the metal flashing of the roof, even though the metal flashing has come off, almost completely off of the stone. There's a gap you can stick your hand in. The only thing behind that stone are weeds that are growing up, but not ivy that has grown in. What the ivy at Queens does, because it's a specific ivy and it's a specific building and a specific environment, is right there. One of two things. It hides the damage until the damage is significant. So in that way, on the wall, it's not good, but it's not causing the damage, it's not making the damage worse. It's not growing into the cracks and expanding them. It does in some ivies in some buildings, but not this. The other thing that the ivy does, and I'll close on this, the root of the ivy attacks the foundation. That's where I think the damage is. If I could have the vines on the wall without the root-related damage, I'd be much more interested in seeing it stay. I'm neutral on ivy, by the way, but...
Thank you. That is really good information, I think, for all of us, because that does come up. We had a property owner who did fight and wanted to be allowed to have ivy, and this has exposed some of our ignorance about some of this thing. So thank you very much.
Great questions. So we'll move on to, so Patty, do you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to ask, what was the source, the reference for that information about the different plants and different stone materials?
I could send that along to staff. It's a wonderful reference, an English study. It looked at I think it was a Queen Victoria edict that says, no more ivy on my buildings. And it was asking, is that really where we should be going? And it goes into great detail. And the final summary is, it depends on the stone, it depends on the ivy, it depends on the exposure. And they look into it and they say, sometimes the leaves keep the rain off the wall, which is good. Sometimes the leaves keep the rain off the wall, which is not good. Sometimes they shelter the wall from the sun, which is good. So they look into it all. It's a very good study.
The reason that I asked the question and mentioned this is because that kind of resource should definitely be known and circulated here. But there are other organizations as well as, and that sounds like a UK heritage group that has produced that. And the UK heritage community has a lot of that material, but also the Canadian Conservation Institute, they're materials experts. And I think there's an architectural group, heritage group as well in Canada. So those kinds of resources and references would probably we should have a list of those because they provide a lot of that information. And in terms of documenting deterioration and causes, they have guidelines and standards for those kinds of things.
Yes, great suggestion. Don?
But a small follow-up in that certainly information is good, but it's got to be in a Canadian context because Ontario, the environment for masonry structures in this country is totally different from England, where you don't have the severe freeze-thaw cycles that we have here. So we have to be very cautious and make sure the resources include Canadian and American sources.
Thank you. All right, well, we could probably spend the rest of the meeting on ivy and the causes of deterioration. So maybe we should move to the nuts and bolts of the application. There is a member of the public section that we'll do first, and then we'll get to the discussion. So I invite members of the public, to anyone here to comment or ask questions about this application. Seeing none, we will then be looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation itself so that we can discuss it. Moved by Catherine, seconded by Dawn. So you see the recommendation here. It has 4 clauses. There's the 2 buildings, right? So there's the alterations in the first clause to Fleming Hall, and then the conditions, 5 conditions, and then there's the alterations to Nickel Hall and the 5 conditions. It's all in one recommendation, and I won't read it out because I'm sure you've all read it, but we're looking for discussion on the recommendations specifically. We need to decide for the heritage permit. We either agree with the recommendation and grant the permit, or we suggest changes. So who would like to speak? Catherine.
Well, just a comment. I'm absolutely blown away by the amount of information we've been given, and also I think congratulations to Queen's to actually do a root and branch approach to dealing with deterioration. So it's just great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Sherman?
Further to my comment too, and again, what I previously said, I think there's a great opportunity, a learning opportunity from this to see if this is if this is deterioration and fixed because of water damage, because of our weather, because of whatever reasons. I think this would be a great opportunity to advance some sort of record documentation that we can use to put to the public on how to not only restore, but also possibly take preventative measures to prevent such damage in our stone and masonry buildings.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, well then we'll move the question on the entire recommendation, both buildings, all 4 clauses. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. Good luck with the work. The next item on the agenda also involves Queen's University. It is 35th Field Company Lane, file number 009. And I believe we have more graphics and another introduction here. This is business item 2. Again, it's a request for a heritage permit with the heritage agreement in the context of the heritage agreement with Queen's University.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This permit is in a similar location. It's on Queen's main campus, but it is entirely involving Jackson Hall, which is on Fifth Field Company Lane. It was originally constructed in 1906 with the upper story added in 1959, and it too is included in the Queen's easement agreement under Part 4. This proposal is with respect to this staircase. The applicants wish to completely remove of the existing staircase and the side cheek walls. all damaged stones are to be repaired and replaced where needed, while the restored staircase and sidewalls will be designed in a manner that match the existing scale, materials, and composition. The applicant is proposing to reduce the riser height from 9 inches to 8 inches, which will result in the addition of 1 extra step, and project the staircase approximately 14 inches further away from the building than currently. The new step will not project beyond the side cheek walls. And there is, again, a detailed assessment included in your agenda package of this proposal. The main staircase is a significant heritage attribute of this building. It's original to the building. Best practices in conservation would encourage repairing the existing structure before replacing it. According to the applicant, repairs have been undertaken on this feature over the years. And the stones and underlying structures are at a point where extensive restoration and repairs are needed. Further minor repairs would be unsuccessful. And as this is the primary means of egress into the building, the staircase must be safe and functional. The applicants have assessed the entire structure and proposed to salvage any stone units that can be reused and reintegrate them back into the structure itself. The underlying concrete structure will not be visible from the public, but will be reconstructed to encourage the safe and stable and longevity of the structure. It will have similar proportions and style to the original and will be constructed with the same materials as which exist today, and will retain the existing original design elements, including the large cheek walls and the limestone capstones. The proposed replacement restoration of the front steps will improve the functionality and longevity of the structure, will aid in its continued use and viability, and thus conserving it in the future. The reconstruction of the staircase with one similar size, style, proportions, and materials will have a negligible impact on the heritage attributes of this building and the overall character of the area. And we have circulated this application to internal departments. Building is asking for a building permit for this work. Engineering notes encroachment permits are necessary if any of the work is to be done on city property. The fire department issued their reminder that adequate exiting of the building needs to be maintained throughout the construction. Comments, this application was circulated to members of this committee. Comments that we received are attached in your agenda package. Most of the comments indicate an overall support of this application. And Mr. Chair, based on our assessment of the information, we recommend approval of this alteration.
Yes, I might start with a rhetorical question. I note from the package that the building was originally designed by 2 Queen's engineering professors, and I was wondering if the applicant approached the current engineering department for help with this work. You don't need to answer, but would have been interesting. I know it's a mechanical engineering building now. Questions from members of the committee? Yes, Peter.
The recommendation which we're being asked to vote on doesn't comment on the comment on page 153, which suggests that there is perhaps a problem with the bottom step, most of which has disappeared, presumably because the walkway in front of it has been elevated over the years, and it seems to me that there's a question here which is undecided at the moment. Am I wrong on this, or should it be decided? Should we have some definite instruction on this? What are we voting on if we don't?
Mr. Chair, I'm not entirely certain I understand the question of the member. The plans before you on the screen identify that bottom step, and there is a note there. I believe it is the grade is to be addressed, and we are recommending approval of the plans as submitted. So they are outlined there. I don't know if the agent has anything further to add with regards to that.
This is in regard to whether the bottom step is at grade or whether it's a different, like a trip hazard. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I mean the comment suggests that it might be something of a might be considered to be a bit of a hazard, but it was a comment that I wasn't sure the status of the comment, and that's why I asked the question.
I guess, yeah, if you could answer what is proposed to be done about that aspect?
So excuse me, the graphic that's on the screen is found on page 184. And the lowest tread that is hatched on your drawing, a nice dark gray like all the other treads, that is the one that's buried in the asphalt right now, and I'm proposing to lift that up out of the ground. It'll actually be placed on top of a brand new bottom step. That's how we get all of these risers to 8 inches. They're 8-inch thick stones. Actually, the stones are a little bit thicker, but at their face, they're 8 inches. And right now, all of the risers are 9-inch. And 9 inches is a heck of a rise for stairs. In fact, when the committee was there taking a look, a couple students came out the front door and one of them stumbled on the bottom step. It's an opportunity to fix an original problem without really changing anything. I don't think anyone's going to notice that we've added a step. I went over it with the committee on site and I showed how right now there's no logic to the steps. They don't tie into the coursing of the cheek walls. They just sit there. So if we add one more tread at the bottom, we get to our 8-inch risers, and part of that is lifting the one that's buried in the ground up to make it the second course. And that's what that drawing shows.
Just to clarify, so the drawing on page 184 is an accurate representation of the proposed work, with the higher, the 8-inch rises and the difference between the original.
That is correct. I think we could be, a 1/4 inch off here and there, but it's a very accurately produced proposal.
Okay, Catherine?
Just a question. Did that lower step disappear into the earth, or was there a buildup of asphalt, whatever, over time?
It may have settled slightly, but it sits on concrete, so it can't settle too much. And the asphalt has been built up quite significantly, 4 or 5 inches. And if you stand back, you can see that it slopes well away, and there's no water near the bottom of the stairs the way you would hope for. We'll be addressing that interface.
Thank you for that. It was just thinking about whether it's going to happen again, but if it's on a concrete slab, then obviously it's not. The only thing you have to worry about is how much more asphalt goes on there over the years. If another 5 inches goes on, then we're in the same situation.
Yeah. I don't think you have to worry about that. The asphalt's built up as much as it could possibly be built up right now, I think. It's almost at the height of the sidewalks. And any repairs, and repairs are needed to the asphalt, any repairs will involve the removal of asphalt, so it won't be built up.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, then we'll go to questions or comments from members of the public. Seeing none, we need a mover and the seconder for the recommendation. Again, it's got the description of the work. It's just the 2 clauses because there's just one building here. Description of the work in the first clause and the 6 conditions. I won't read them out, but the work is basically the removal and reconstruction of the main stairway, and then the description of that and then the 6 conditions recommended by staff. So I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Don, seconded by Sherman. Any discussion? Yes, Sherman.
Just I guess a comment to staff relative to the comments I made about that last step, and that to encourage the documentation, that is the plans, to have more comprehensive notes so that those changes are clear. In other words, like that overall height elevation and the change to step. It would be easier for us to catch that if the drawings were more complete or more concise. That's how it is that I think that it would help in the future.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question on the recommendation as a whole. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. We're coming to our third application involving Queen's University. This one is for Roselawn, 421 Union Street, site of the current Donald Gordon Center. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This application relates to the property at 421 Union Street. It's located on the north side of Union Street at the corner of College. And this property contains a rectangular 3-bay stone house known as Roselawn. This house is one of Kingston's most notable country houses of the 1840s. The property was designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and it's also a National Historic Site of Canada. The site now operates as the Donald Gordon Conference Center through Queen's University. This application has been submitted to request permission to construct an accessory structure in the northwest corner of the property, adjacent to the designated stables, in order to house a steam boiler that will provide heat to the Donald Gordon Center. An application for a minor variance was submitted concurrently with this application to request relief from the northwest side setback from 7 meters to 2. And this application was approved at the end of February. This project is also subject to a site plan control modification, and that will be submitted once all Heritage Act approvals are in place. So as per the applicant's elevations and the site plan, this new structure will be 47.3 square meters in area, have a peaked roof to a height of 4.97 meters and a chimney reaching 6.97 meters. The structure will sit on a concrete slab, be clad in a material that will complement the heritage buildings on site and also meet Ontario Building Code and Fire Code regulations. The applicant has proposed to clad the structure using stucco and a stone veneer base. However, due to the distance between the buildings on site, a non-combustible material may be required, and the applicant has, in consultation with staff, proposed other options should they be required to modify their plans to meet the Ontario Building Code and Fire requirements. The conference center is currently connected to a steam line that runs beneath the south side of Union Street that runs from the steam plant down the road. And the installation of this boiler will allow the conference center to be removed from this aging infrastructure. So as I mentioned, the property is designated under Part 4, and it's also a National Historic Site of Canada. It's significant for a variety of reasons, including its elaborate neoclassical portico featuring pilasters and sidelights and the upper story Venetian windows that remain intact. It was also constructed by William Coverdale, prominent local architect. It's notable as an integrated grouping of 4 buildings, as well as one of a few remaining examples of a house wall port crochet combination. And the site also retains its intact original limestone block, stable block at the rear of the lot, which encloses the courtyard. The designation bylaw notes that the stable contributes to the courtyard's sense of enclosure, which is as important as the architecture itself. And the description notes the house's scale, large parkland lot, and many interior elements as significant defining elements. So in order to assure the continued use of a historic place, new construction can be a necessary component of heritage conservation. However, the introduction of new structures on a property can also have significant impacts on a place's value. So it's important to ensure that new construction doesn't obscure, radically change, or have negative impacts on the character-defining materials, forms, or spatial configuration of a heritage resource. Parks Canada's standards and guidelines require that new construction be both physically and visually compatible with, subordinate to, and distinguishable from the existing heritage resource. The standards and guidelines also note that a well-designed addition can enhance the value of a historic place, and the designation bylaw notes the buildings on the site are superbly integrated and that it retains a sense of elegance and space. The location of the proposed accessory structure will not be located on a character-defining facade, and the northwest corner is removed from the enclosed courtyard created by the stable buildings and the other 3 buildings on the site. And as per the elevations provided by the applicant, the new structure will reach 4.97 meters with the chimney at 6.97 meters, which will be lower than the peak of the existing stable block at 6.9 meters. So this new structure will be completely obscured by the stone villa and the 1990s building in front. The applicant has indicated that the materials will need to be dictated by fire code, and they propose stucco with a stone veneer base, as well as metal roofing and stone veneer cladding for the chimney enclosure as well. Staff have recommended other material options that have been included as conditions of approval, and staff have indicated a preference for the stucco textured cement fiberboard or brick, as these would be the most compatible and yet distinguishable from the designated buildings on site. So this application has been circulated internally, and comments from the internal departments have been included where appropriate. And this application was also circulated to the committee in advance. One committee member noted that it would be important for this new structure to consider the overall aesthetic of the site, and staff have considered this comment throughout the report and have incorporated its intent into the conditions of approval. So staff recommends the approval of this application, subject to the conditions outlined herein. Thank you. The applicant is also here if the committee has any questions at this point.
Thank you. Just to point out for those that did not notice in the package, the historic site designation predates the Ontario Heritage Act, and it's from 1969, and the bylaw that designated this property is from 1975. So, questions from members of the committee? Okay. Questions from members of the public? Seeing none, we've got the recommendation here. Again, it describes, there's 2 clauses. The first one describes the work, which is a new structure, and then the 4 conditions recommended by staff. The second condition is a recommendation of 4 possible materials that could be used that are recommended. So, who would like to move the recommendation? Councillor Schell, seconded by Peter. Any discussion? All right. Yes, Sherman.
I just wonder if it'd be possible to remove the option for neutral colored steel. I love the idea of that it looked like a masonry building rather than a clad building. Is that possible?
That's a question to staff about the 2D option and why it's there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant has requested that some options for potential materials be included so that they can meet the fire code regulations. The neutral colored steel was suggested to provide a distinguishable material from the limestone staples on the site. But perhaps if there's another option that the committee would like to substitute, I think they're open to that.
Okay, I see the applicant's agent is here to maybe answer further or give some more context. Go ahead, please state your name and answer the question.
Tony Goetsis, Campus Planning and Development, Queen's University. Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The reasons we have provided the multiple materials is just to ensure that we can meet requirements with respect to fire separations. We wouldn't want to be in a situation where we would have to come back before the committee to approve an alternative material. Through the application process, though, we will be going through site plan approval and a building permit, and the materials that are selected will have to be approved by staff as we move through those processes. So while that neutral metal is an option, it wouldn't be our preferred option, but it would be an option in case we can't meet fire separation requirements.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, then I will call the question on the recommendation as a whole. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you, and good luck with the work. So we can call Paul back to the room because the next application is not to do with his employer. This is 82 to 86 Brock Street, application for a heritage permit. This is a building in the Brock Street Common, and I believe we have graphics and introduction coming up from Mackenzie. Go ahead. Welcome back, Paul.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this application relates to the property at 82 to 86 Brock Street. It's located on the south side of Brock Street between King and Wellington, and it was constructed around 1850. This property was designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act in 1976. This application has been submitted to request permission to install 2 new signs on the Brock Street facade, a mast arm sign and a wall sign. The proposed mast arm sign will hang from a wrought iron mast arm and will be a 20 by 20 inch double-sided square panel featuring the company logo. And it will be centered above the right storefront window. The wall sign is proposed to be a wood panel, 8 feet by 16 inches, and affixed with wood lettering, likely gold, painted in gold, edged with quarter-round wooden trim, and the background would be painted to match the storefront colors. This panel would be attached with galvanized screws to the top band of the cornice with supported blocks behind, and attached with similar screws. Both of these new signs will meet all provisions of the sign bylaw. So this property was designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. It contains a 3-story 4-bay terraced row of limestone buildings with simple architectural details, such as the plain-cut stone sills, angled voussoirs, and an unadorned cornice. These buildings have consistently contained a number of businesses at the ground floor and apartments above. The designation bylaw notes that these buildings were never intended to have great architectural importance, but that they are restrained and functional buildings with their plain street facades on 3 sides. The reasons for designation note that this chain of stone buildings is a good and rare example of a terraced commercial row that has lost none of its links. It provides a living illustration of commercial buildings of the mid-19th century in the heart of the city. The description also notes that most of the storefronts on Wellington and Brock have received modern treatment, but that the alterations have, for the most part, helped preserve the character of the range. And this description has been included as Exhibit B to this report. The subject property pertains to this row of limestone buildings. They have very simple architectural details and have retained their commercial use since their construction. The building's currently being used by a commercial business known as K-Town Cups, and this building makes an important contribution to the Brock Street streetscape. It's a prominent, busy one-way street that provides direct linkages to Market Square and the city's waterfront. The design of the storefront entrance and the highly visible facade of this building are important from a conservation perspective. While specific attributes aren't identified in the bylaw, any alterations to the Brock Street facade could impact the heritage value of the building, as this side of the building most completely illustrates the property's value. The application notes that the proposed new signage includes the wrought iron mast arm, as well as the rectangular sign to be installed on the facade. Staff support the design, materials, location, and size of the mast arm, given that the applicant has indicated that it will be mounted to the limestone facade in accordance with the city's masonry policy in order to avoid any irreversible damage to the stone, and it will be centered above the right window. The mast arm will also enhance the visibility of the store as pedestrians and motorists navigate their way along Brock Street. And as part of the commercial facade of the building, this new sign will be in keeping with the building's historic use. The material size and design are also in keeping with the restrained functional character of the property, which meets best practices in conservation. Staff records indicate that the subject property has undergone significant restoration in the last 5 years, which uncovered the limestone voussoirs and the transoms above the doors, which had previously been obscured by a wooden storefront on the ground floor. The design of this wooden storefront would have once included a signboard, which allowed for signage, but it has since been removed. And so currently there's really no ideal space for a wall sign. The installation of this proposed wall sign within the cornice will not detract from the heritage attributes of the building, given that the majority of the cornice will still be visible from the public realm. So this application was circulated internally, and the comments from the internal departments have been included as conditions of approval where appropriate. The application was also circulated to the committee in advance through the DASH system, and these comments have been included as Exhibit D. An initial concern was noted regarding the paint color of the proposed signage, and staff were able to clarify with the applicant that the proposed paint scheme will match the colors of the existing storefront. So gold lettering with the rust color and vanilla color for background detail. And a condition has been included that should the paint color change, a new scheme would be provided to staff for final approval. The remaining concern that was identified by 2 committee members with respect to the appropriateness of introducing both a mast arm and a wall sign, given that the property doesn't have an area meant for signs, as the signboard was removed as part of the restoration work, but also given the existing logos in the windows of the storefront. One of the members suggested that perhaps if the mast arm sign could be larger and lowered to the ground, this would negate the need for a wall sign. However, the dimensions of the mast arm sign are regulated by the sign bylaw, and the proposal is already at the extent of those provisions. A further suggestion was made to install the wall sign within the limestone below the cornice. However, staff are of the opinion that the installation within the wood cornice would be a more reversible alteration that's less destructive. And finally, with respect to the logos in the windows, these are not an alteration that is necessitated by this application, by the proposed application, and they also don't require approval through the sign, through the building department, in accordance with the sign bylaw. The logos are essentially stickers. They're applied to the interior of the glass and could be removed very easily. And staff have reviewed the proposal against the heritage attributes of the building and the standards and guidelines for conservation. And the proposed alteration meet the intent of those best practices. So staff have no concerns with the introduction of these signs, as they will have no negative impact on the attributes of the building. So Ultimately, these signs will help attract customers to the store, which will ensure the building's continued use and viability, thus conserving it into the future. And upon review of the submitted materials, as well as the applicable policies and legislation, staff recommend conditional approval of this application. Happy to answer questions. The applicant is also here this morning if the committee has further questions.
Thank you. So we'll start with questions only from members of the committee. Paul?
Can we get clarification? I understand it's supposed to be on the right-hand side window, but the picture we have of Exhibit C, the location of the mast arm sign, we really cannot see it. It's very dark. Is there any way that we could see it better somehow?
So does this work? Okay. No? Oh, okay. So the location of the new mast arm will be in this area underneath the window, and it's centered above this right ground floor window.
Thank you.
Sherman.
I guess first to that, there are two designs shown in your illustrations about the mast iron sign. One of them has the support above the top of the sign. The other has the support below the top of the sign. Depending on where that sign is installed, I don't see that there's a lot of space for the armature, like a large enough stone face. So I'm wondering which one would actually work. My suggestion was the one that goes above rather than below the sign. Just so if you could answer that question.
Sure. So the applicant is proposing the one that faces up, this one with sort of the curved details, so that it would fit. The first image is more of a concept image to show the dimensions of the sign.
So it would be the one on the right with a 20 by 20 board hung from it. Another question?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Regarding the board sign, I guess, I had asked or recommend that the profile, that sign actually be different if applied, for a number of reasons. One of which, most significantly, is a signboard was obviously was stated taken off of this building, so opportunity of sign to go on an appropriate signboard has been removed. In the reinstallation of a signboard, that is a board across the face of the wall, I think that this one is inappropriate, that it be mounted on the cornice and basically hang a third way the width of the building on over two material substances. So basically, I would rather see the board either removed totally or the sign changed so that it more accurately represents the type of signage that would be seen on such a building. And those types can be seen along this street, along Princess Street, and along many other streets in the city. A sign of this type cannot be seen anywhere that I've found in the city. I do not believe it is appropriate.
What's your question? At this point, we're just having questions.
The question is, would the applicant consider a different design of the sign board?
Okay, I guess that's a question to the applicant, if they're here, if they're willing to respond. Please state your name and turn on a microphone there. You press the little button.
Good morning. Brian Shelley. I'm one of the owners of K-Town Cups. I'm a little unclear as to what you're proposing. It's a square sign that goes up onto the cornice. I'm not exactly sure what your point is as far as a different design.
Yeah, so I'll ask your question again.
That the signboard crosses the cornice, hangs in front of the underside of the cornice, covering some of the stone. I would rather see the sign be on the face of the stone itself, under the cornice, either as wide as a window or door, or as wide as the whole component, such as you see on other stores, whereas the sign board is actually the width of the store itself?
So you'd rather me mount it on the stone and then cover up the windows instead of have it smaller above and not actually interfere with the face of the store?
As I see it, proportionally, a smaller sign that goes just over the door itself that is faced on the stone would reduce the size of the printing of the lettering of the sign.
Down to about 4 inches.
Well, I don't...
Which would not be visible
I don't see
at all.
any dimensions.
The lettering in the window is about 3.5 inches tall, and you cannot read that from across the street.
Okay.
I would not accept that.
A good example could be found on, it's on Princess Street, 254. There is signage that is similar to what I recommend. It's just, I just think this board is inappropriate in its placement.
Okay, well, that would be a comment during the discussion. So I guess you've asked your question. It's been answered by the applicant. So we'll move along to other questions. Questions only. Go ahead, Don.
Part of the related concern is whether for a fairly, I mean, if you look at the picture on the left and add to that a mast arm sign coming down from above, there's just too many signs, too much clutter on a fairly narrow frontage. So I guess one suggestion was that maybe we could just do without the wall sign and go with a mast arm sign and keep those 2 window signs. The other question is, are those window signs going to continue when you have these new signs? Because there's an impression of really too many signs for the space.
So the question has to do with the window decals. Would they be part of the new look with the 2 new signs and the window decals?
Well, as far as the window decals go, after about 1 o'clock, they're barely even visible across the street with the glare that we get. You can see the birds and paws sign better than you can see mine. Secondly, they're on the inside. This committee does not have the purview to dictate to me what I put on the inside of my window. There has been discussion previously between me and the other owner about removing one of them before this was even brought up, but I don't think that should be considered.
Yeah, no, we're not suggesting that you remove them. The question was...
The suggestion was that I remove them.
What the question was, are you removing them, not you ought to remove them?
That'll be a discussion that me and the other owner have in the future.
Right. Here's your answer. We're straying into discussion. I know that Don and Sherman, you're thinking about options to do with the wall sign, so that is not in question period. That is in discussions. You make amendments. And so if you're thinking about that, think about how your amendment is going to be worded, and we'll get right to discussing that once that motion's on the floor. Right now, these are questions for context. Yes, Paul.
This is a question to the applicant. To make it more concentric, instead of having the walls, the mounted sign or the hanging sign to the right, is there any options of actually putting it in the center above the door to make it more equal? That's just a thought I had.
Again, that would be an amendment to the recommendation. The applicant has asked for the sign to be located centered above the right-hand window. So that's what we're asked to either approve or not approve.
I don't mind addressing that question.
Okay, you can go ahead and...
There was previously a sign mounted above the center of the door, and that would be the ideal location. Unfortunately, with the location of the Cushman-Wakefield sign, it completely blocks most of the view. So we're trying to get as high up on the street as we can to be able to get some exposure from the lower end of the street. So the highest point as far as the store goes is the top right of the image. And so we're just trying to get a little bit better visibility out of it putting it at that side.
Any other questions? Members of the public are free to ask questions about the application. Seeing none, we need a mover and seconder for the recommendation to get it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Paul. So the recommendation is that the alterations be approved in accordance with the details in the application, with said alterations to include the installation of one new mast arm and one new wall sign, and there are 4 conditions in the second clause, including a sign permit, an encroachment permit, and changes in paint color be approved by staff, and of course, according to the masonry restoration policy. Those are the conditions. So the item is now open for discussion. Who would like to go first? Don?
There are questions raised about the wall sign in particular, and I think it might be more efficient to separate the motion into 2. One to approve the mast arm sign and one to approve the wall sign. And I think that can be done simply by inserting a second recommendation the same as the first one and altering the bottom lines of each one. So the first one says to include the installation of one new mast arm sign, and the second recommendation would say to include the installation of one new wall sign.
We'll just maybe get the planner involved in this discussion. Is the clerk hasn't ruled on whether procedurally it's permitted to separate that, but from a planning perspective, could we deal with these 2 signs separately? Any of this staff? Yeah, go ahead, Mackenzie.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We could separate the 2 recommendations, but I'd like to ensure that all of the conditions would carry forward for both.
Okay, so if we separated, we would need to maintain the 4 conditions. So then we would have 4 clauses, 2 for the mast arm sign and 2 for the wall sign. Yeah. Okay, so there's 2 aspects to this suggested amendment, and we just want to get it procedurally correct. The main suggestion is to amend it so that we approve just the mast arm sign and not the wall sign. To do that, we need to get it right procedurally, but before we discuss that, the procedural side I will clarify before the amendment is what the amendment needs to look like. But before we do that, Mr. Newman is going to speak to the relevant ramifications of this. In other words, if we change the recommendation and it is appealed, what are the possibilities? Go ahead, Mr. Newman.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to remind the committee that so we're right now looking at a proposal to alter or to amend the recommendation to give consideration to one of 2 signs, and ultimately I think the objective here is to support one but not both. And I just wanted to make sure the committee is clear of, so if we go down that path and if it's supported, I just want to remind the committee that we do have a staff recommendation which supports the proposal as made. So for the 2 signs, we are comfortable with the 2 signs and that they're not going to affect the designated heritage attributes of the building, and on that basis, we're recommending support for both. If the applicant, this goes to council supports the amendment to only support one sign. If the applicant disagrees with that recommendation, of course, they have appeal rights to the Ontario Municipal Board. So I just wanted to make that clear because that may be the path we're going down. So.
Just point of clarification. So if it was appealed, would it not go to the Board of Conservancy because it's Part 4 designated?
That's right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So not the OMB, but the Board of Conservancy. What's it called? The Conservation Review Board. Yeah. So that's the appeal place for Part 4 designated properties, not Part 5. Part 5 go to the OMB. So it would be a situation where the staff recommendation would be part of the evidence in favor of both signs, and the committee's recommendation in favor of only one sign would be part of the evidence and the rationale for council's decision, and the board would have to decide between those two if appealed, just so everyone's clear. This is the usual case with any altered Part 4 application that we alter here at committee. Okay. So that being said, Don, what would you? Oh, hang on. We need a recess. Sorry, the clerk's here, and I guess they're talking about the procedural element now. Okay, we're going to reconvene. Calling us back to order. No longer at ease. That means you, Sherman. Sorry, folks. So staff was just giving us some context. Once our decision is made one way or the other on this amendment, and we vote on the final recommendation, it goes to council. Council either passes the recommendation from the Heritage Committee, or doesn't. If you recall the Springer property, they did not uphold the Heritage Committee's decision. They went in a different direction. It's up to council. The final decision is with council. After council has made its decision, the applicant has the right of appeal if they don't like the council's decision. Then it goes to the Conservation Review Board if that happens, and then the Conservation Review Board's decision comes back to council. It doesn't come back to us. So this is the only time we will be dealing with this. The clerk tells me the best way to deal with the suggestion is to just make a simple amendment to delete 3 words from the recommendation, and then vote on that amendment. Is that what you wish to do, Don?
Sorry, I was suggesting that there be 2 recommendations. One for one
so
sign.
the clerk has suggested that the easiest way to achieve the end is to vote on the first one with just one. The original recommendation contains 2 signs. Suggest an amendment to change the recommendation to only include 1 sign. Vote on that. If it passes, that becomes the recommendation. If it fails, we go back to discussing the original recommendation. And actually, there is no limit to the number of amendments that can be proposed. So you try an amendment, and then if you don't like the result, you can try another amendment. But I'm not suggesting that you should do that. But the basis for the reference point is the original recommendation. So what is it in the original recommendation that you wish to amend? That is the question.
Suggestion would sort of work, but it implies that we have to vote against the mast arm sign in order to consider the other. I mean, my impression is that we like the mast arm sign, and if we vote against it, we're making a statement that is not really...
No, I think you misunderstood. The suggestion from the clerk is that you propose an amendment to delete the words and one new wall sign. That's it. That's the amendment. And then if that passes, we're left with a recommendation that includes the new mast sign, and then you vote on that. The amended recommendation would only contain 1 sign. The amendment is to delete wording from the original recommendation. Do you understand? So your members have expressed concerns with the wall sign component. So the best way to deal with that is to suggest an amendment that we delete those words from the recommendation. Now,
but then also add another recommendation that includes the wall sign.
You could do that at a later time, but that would be a new recommendation. Right. Okay. So now we're Let's just talk about things in the affirmative. There's the affirmative of this recommendation is that we approve two signs. If you're not in agreement with that recommendation, and you have a contrary recommendation, it's an amendment. Okay? Now you have to decide what it is about the original affirmative recommendation that you don't want that in the recommendation for you in order for you to approve it. How do you need to amend the recommendation so that you can approve it? That is the question. So if you don't do any amendment, you either vote yes or no to the recommendation. And if you don't like it with the two signs, you vote no. If you would like to find a way to support the recommendation, you have to propose an amendment that allows you to support the recommendation. What do you need to remove from the original recommendation in order for you to be able to support the recommendation, if that's what you're trying to do? Sherman.
Then I would request or recommend whatever the removal of those of the one wall sign, the removal of those final words, so that as my consideration is only for the mast arm sign, that I could approve.
So your amendment would be to remove the words "and one new wall sign." So that's 4 words. Did you get that, Mr. Clerk? Okay, so now a discussion, there's an amendment. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Dawn. So the discussion is to remove 4 words from the recommendation. The words "and one new wall sign." That's the only thing that's in order now. You can also ask questions of staff at this point, but if you'd like to comment, go ahead. Yes, Paul.
I can't support that amendment. I think this is a sound proposal for the 2 signs. The applicant explained to us why he needs the larger lettering to make it more prominent. He also explained why the wall sign had to be, or the mounted sign had to be the height it was. The only thing I could say, if they didn't want the wall sign, maybe put the lettering right on the cornice itself. That could be another recommended, but I can't support this amendment.
Yes, so what's in order is whether or not, well, you can speak to whether or not supporting the amendment, but also the context of the amendment itself, but not the overall recommendation. So the only thing that's in order is the wall sign at this point, the presence or the absence of the wall sign in the recommendation. Councillor Schell?
I also would not support the amendment. I understood the applicant's explanation about the sun shining, the way the windows do kind of disappear. I go to this store regularly, but it's not a conflict, even though I like it very much. And understanding small businesses and how tough it is to survive. I think it's a beautiful sign, and I support the sign, so I will be not supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Go ahead, Patricia.
I also don't support the amendment. I think the explanations have been good and satisfy my questions about this. Also, I think that in the big scheme of things, there's always a pull between, maintaining as much of the heritage characteristics as possible and what the demands of the modern world are, and that is with every kind of heritage that exists. I mean, that's when you look at musical instruments in collections, do you play it or you do not play it? From the heritage point of view, you say don't play it because it'll deteriorate, but there is the modern pull that if you don't hear the music, is it truly, are you truly keeping alive the instrument? And I think it's the same with a business like this. There you have to reach a balance, and if the store can't do its business or the marketing helps the business, that adds to the whole heritage aspect of the community. So I don't support the amendment either.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Don.
I think it's a little unfortunate that the way this has come out is that we have to make a decision on the wall sign, because I'd like to have a discussion on the wall sign, maybe a smaller one, maybe a longer one, maybe in a different location. I'm not against the wall sign, but I'm against this design. So that's I'm given the procedure, I'm suggesting that people approve the amendment and then make another recommendation to approve a wall sign, and then we can discuss the nature of the wall sign.
Thank you. Just to repeat the procedure, if you are envisaging a different wall sign than is in the recommendation, that would be yet a different amendment than the one that's currently being proposed. So let's finish with this amendment, and then if you would like to think of other wording, that would be at a different time. Right now, the only thing we're thinking about is whether we should remove the wall sign altogether from the recommendation. Anyone else wish to speak? Sherman.
I look at it as a request to address the issue of signage on the building, on the business, for the business. And my objection to the size and whatever removing of the board sign is that principally, if you restore a historic feature on a building, you restore it to what was once. And the manner in which the signboard, it appears, was taken off of this building, the board has proposed does not replicate the way in which signboards are done on these heritage buildings. And the board that was, it just in itself, the application suggests that signboard was removed. Therefore, opportunity for signage on that board was removed. If you replace the signboard, then you can have signage on that signboard. This signboard does not replace I propose this signboard does not replace the manner in which signage is put on the building. That's why it's hard for me to support design as such.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question on the amendment to remove those 4 words from the recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? And that fails 3-5. So the recommendation is intact. We're back to the recommendation that's in the package. The amendment failed, so there's no change. Any other discussion? There's something that wasn't mentioned. I'll just mention it now. The staff, when talking about the location of the sign, if it's a problem, to some members' opinion, in its current location proposed on top of the cornice, and the reason for locating it there was staff mentioned not to affix it to the stone because it would be less invasive if affixed to the wooden cornice. What about the possibility of affixing it vertically down from the cornice so that it hangs above or in front of the limestone without being affixed to the limestone? Is that a possibility?
So just so I'm clear, your suggestion is to hang the sign here?
A sign in front of the limestone above the lintel instead of in front of the cornice. Is that a possibility?
I think that could be a possibility if the applicant is interested. However, it would still block that portion of the voussoirs which were uncovered.
Right. I'm just trying to help you with your suggestion that you might be okay with the wall sign in a different format. If this is your last chance to propose such an amendment. Ms. Rochelle.
Thank you. I understand your comment, but then it would make the mast sign look odd. You'd have a mast sign up here and the K-Town Cup sign below. So you begin to look a little poorly designed, I would think. I'm very happy with the recommendation as is. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, we'll vote on the recommendation as it is in the package. Well, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much, and good luck. Okay, item 5, notice of intention to designate multiple addresses. We seem to have an item like this in every, fairly often and these days, which is a good thing. I think most would agree. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Indeed, we're attempting to bring more designations before this committee as they're available. And today we have 8 to consider. This report is information on the cultural heritage value of 8 properties in the municipality, and recommends that a notice of intention be served on these properties. As part of the Cultural Heritage Property Evaluation and Conservation Project from 2015 and the Cataraqui Village Inventory and Evaluation from 2011, we have the background reports have been prepared for these properties, and they were evaluated under Ontario Regulation 906 to determine their cultural heritage value. The first property is at 4097 Bath Road, is the Hugh Rankin Jr. house, built circa 1860. It's an early example of a 2-story limestone farmhouse. It has associated value with Hugh Rankin Jr., who built the house, and the Rankin and McGinn families, who owned and operated a grist mill, was formerly located adjacent to this property. It operated for over 100 years and helped shape the Collins Bay community. This is a landmark building along Bath Road, and the full description of its heritage value is included in your agenda package. Staff met with the owner on site at the end of February, and he has no concerns with this designation. This is his neighbor at 4111 Bath Road. It's the McGinn House, built in 1851, and again, it's a good example of a 1.5-story and 2-story limestone farmhouse with classical additions. It has associated value again with the McGinn family, who were first United Empire Loyalist families to settle in this area. Anthony McGinn Sr. Was a local justice of the peace and instrumental in forming Collins Bay as a village. It is again a landmark along Bath Road, and the full statement is in your agenda package. Despite our best efforts, we were unable to make contact with the owner, this is 151 Clergy Street East, known as Maple Cottage. It's a good example of 1840s residence designed in a classical style. It was built between 1842 and 1848 and has associated value with the Meagher family, John McLeod and Richard Logan. Major James Meagher was served in the Peninsular War and was a city councillor. The property was leased to McLeod and Logan. John McLeod and Richard Logan were builders in Kingston and operated a quarry in Portsmouth Village. And again, the full statement is in your agenda package. The owner has confirmed that they have no concerns with the designation of this property. The Bryant Stone House at 488 Division Street, which also includes the adjacent house, which is on the same property at 482 Division Street, is a good example of a classically balanced stone house. It has association with John Bryant Jr., who is a local stone dealer, farmer, quarryman, and whose careers may have played a role in the construction of this fine house. It was built between 1860 and 1878, and the full description is in your agenda package. Again, despite our efforts, we were unable to contact the owners. This is a well-known property in the city of Kingston. It is 2263 Princess Street, known as the Beamish House. It includes a complex of limestone buildings, including the grand main house with a prominent stone barn tucked behind the building. The main house is also connected with a recessed stone passageway and a rare attached carriage house. Its association with Dr. William Moore Beamish, who purchased the property in 1833 and built this house by 1852. He was a prominent businessman, township councillor, and practicing physician. The property is also associated with MPP Joseph Haycock, who owned the property in 1877, and is also associated with well-known local local architect William Coverdale, who designed the house and some of its early additions. This is a landmark in Cataraqui Village, and the full statement is included in your agenda. Staff met with the new owners of this property at the end of January, and they have no concerns with this initiative. This is the John P. Powley House at 3516 to 3518 Princess Street. It is an example of a classically balanced two-story lime house. In 1852, John Powley sold portions of land to help facilitate the settlement of Westbrook, and it is thought this house was built around that time. The Powley family were prominent landowners. They also ran the Powley sawmill and helped in this building is tied to the development of the village of Westbrook. The full statement again is in your agenda, and despite our efforts, we were not able to contact the owners. This is the guest farmhouse at 2043 Sydenham Road, north of the city. It is an early example of it is an early 19th century Ontario vernacular stone farmhouse with 4-bay facade. It also has a 1-story stone addition that runs the length of the northeast elevation, and it joins it to a stone outbuilding. The property is associated with the Guest family, who owned the property since 1824. Micaiah Guest was a Canadian Board Methodist, farmer, yeoman, township councillor, justice of the peace, and roadmaster. The house was built prior to 1851 with a half-story added in 1861. Again, this is a landmark along Sydenham Road, and the full statement is in your agenda. Again, despite our best efforts, including knocking on this guy's door, we were unable to get a hold of the owner. And finally, the Edward Horsey Cottage at 815 Wortman Avenue. This is a good example of a mid-19th century, 1.5-story Italianate villa style house, and is of course associated with Edward Horsey, who's a well-known local architect, and is attributed to the design of a number of National Historic sites in Kingston, including Elizabeth Cottage on Brock Street, the Frontenac County Courthouse, and a number of prominent buildings at Kingston Penitentiary. He came into possession of this property in 1849 and built this house circa 1862. It is located on the edge of what became known as Horsey Bay, and it's a distinctive landmark along Wortman Avenue. Again, the statement of significance is in your agenda package, and we spoke with the owner at the end of January, who has no concerns with this designation. These statements were reviewed by the Heritage Properties Working Group, and who will support these designations. And as I mentioned, while the owners are not required to support the designations, we have reached out to all owners via registered mail, phone calls where available, emails, and even stopping by the properties in person. It is staff's recommendation that committee support this application and direct or encourage council to pass a notice of intention to designate all 8 properties. Should no notice of objection be received, we recommend that council approve the designation bylaws as outlined in your agenda package. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for all the hard work on this file. Any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Schell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what it means when you haven't heard from the owner, that's simply what it means, that you've done everything you can to contact them. They simply haven't responded.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We've sent registered mail, which has been received as they signed for it. In some cases, we've left voice messages, but they just have not contacted us back. So we've done what we feel is adequate consultation.
And once we designate these, that means they will get a notice of designation, but they have a time to apply to protest. Is that correct?
The way the Heritage Act works, Mr. Chair, is that the owners will be circulated by mail once council endorses the notice of intention to designate. They get circulated the notice, and they have 30 days to submit a letter of objection to the clerk's office if they have a heritage reason to object to the designation. If they do not submit an objection within the 30 days, then the bylaw will be brought back to council for its final reading and approval. Again, that bylaw is then registered on title of the property, and the owners are circulated a notice of passing, and we also circulate them a copy of the bylaw for convenience. If they submitted an objection to the clerk's office within that 30-day time period, the matter is then handed off to the Conservation Review Board, and a hearing or pre-hearing is determined with the applicants, and the Conservation Review Board will provide their recommendations back to council, who ultimately have the final decision in these matters.
That's really interesting. So, yeah, do you find that it's more likely that you will hear from an owner after you've sent the council designation notice? Or is it generally if you send information and you don't get a response, it just happens?
It's been my experience, Mr. Chair, if the owners have concern, they will voice it. And they will do it loudly and clearly and as soon as we get a hold of them. Typically at this point, we frame our letters, for the benefit of the committee, we frame our letters that if they don't have any concerns within a certain time frame, that we will accept that as no concerns if they do not respond to us. It's a way of sort of progressing these and not waiting and in vain for a response. So it's been as I said, it's been my experience, if they have a concern, they'll let us know early. By the point that council is issuing a notice of intention to designate, the owners don't typically object at that point.
That was great information, thank you. I just have one more question, and this is about 488 Division Street. It's a rather derelict-looking property, and I believe it changed hands within the last couple of years, and it's got a huge backyard. So I wondered if there was a development proposal already on the books for a property like this, and I could imagine the developer would object to a designation because it would affect how his development could proceed. What would happen if someone had an active, or I'm sort of springing it on you, but if there was an active development application, could we then designate a property after the application had been sort of deemed complete? Or would we really be prevented from doing that because it would affect how the application would move forward in terms of the designation?
I'm going to look to the senior legal counsel to correct me if I'm wrong. It's my understanding that this council, if so chooses, can issue a notice of intention at any point. That if there's an active planning application, so often heritage conservation is a reactive type of thing. Luckily, these ones we're trying to get ahead of that on, and which is why we're actively pursuing these designations now, because there is no active file that we're aware of. But I think it is my understanding that council, if they choose, can put a notice of intent on at any point. Certainly from a customer service perspective, that's not something we would typically do, but I think there is that right, and at that point it would perhaps trigger more consideration to the heritage characteristics of the property in the review and approval of an active planning application.
That's great, thank you very much.
Just want to point out, I mentioned it already, it was a different situation, but we got a notice of intention to demolish where the Scotiabank building is right now. And this committee voted to designate as a reaction, and council voted to accept the application. So ultimately, it's council's decision, and the timing is also council's. So, subject to council meetings, I suppose. This, if passed, would go to council April 18th, I believe, and that's when the designation would take effect. Is that correct?
I believe this, sorry, perhaps the clerk can tell me the exact dates, but typically in the city we will pass, the council would pass the notice of intention and give the bylaw first couple of readings at its first meeting. If the notice of if the appeal period expires without a objection, then it would come back to council for its final reading. The exact dates, I'm afraid I don't have them in front of me. But
it would probably be the next council meeting after the 30 days has expired then. Yeah. Okay. So our committee's involvement, though, ends with this vote that we're about to have, whether we support the designation, and then it would go as a recommendation to council. So who would like to move the recommendation? Moved by Catherine, seconded by Councillor Schell. So the recommendation has multiple clauses, each one to do with there's 2 clauses for each address, I believe, and it will vote all in one vote for the entire recommendation. So this would be to designate all of the properties mentioned here today, unless anyone wants to separate. Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Schell would like to comment before we vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment, again, to thank staff so much. I get the Toronto Star, and Toronto is tearing down buildings left, right, and centre because they don't have a robust process that we now have in the city of Kingston to list and designate properties. So thanks very much for all this movement that we're seeing. That was it. Thank you.
Yes, and to add to that, I'll just say that your point, Mr. Leary, about the proactive approach that staff has taken to avoid the unpleasantness, we'll say, of a situation where we might want to designate something that's already been proposed for development. Do it this way, it's done, it's transparent, the public is notified, and it's much better in this form. So if you can keep it up with the proactive work, very much in favor of that. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Last item in Part D of business is the pre-application consultation for 412 Regent Street in Berryfield. And now this is the file where we got the updated drawings in the addendum. So if you could look at those now, and raise your hand if you would like more than a few seconds to peruse that information before we start the presentation from staff. The staff will be giving us the updated information, including these new drawings, so maybe if you can follow along. But go ahead, Sherman, you want a little time? A few, okay. We'll just take a 2-minute recess where everyone can just read the material we received in the addendum. see if Patty comes back. So this is okay. I'm going to call the meeting to order again. We'll get Mackenzie working on the introduction here, and there's one member still out of the room, but hopefully she'll be back before when it's time to discuss. This is pre-consultation session, and it'll be presented with some graphics by Mackenzie. Go ahead.
Great. Yes, so this is a pre-application for a project at 412 Regent Street in Berryfield. The subject property is located on the south side of Regent Street between Drummond and Main in the Village of Berryfield Conservation District. The original house was constructed around 1890 and an addition to the rear in the mid-20th century. The original home was built by William Allen and is one of several structures built in Berryfield by the Allen brothers. According to the applicant, the rear portion of the existing dwelling appears to have been added around the 1960s with several features that are inconsistent and unsympathetic to the character of the original portion of the building. According to the application, the owner has plans to renovate the interior of the house and harmonize the exterior facades while recognizing the character of the original sections of the home. The applicant and the agent for the owner, De Groot Construction, has provided a detailed design package of drawings showing the concept plans and proposed renovations and reconstructions, and these are included as exhibits B and C. And these include alterations to the front, the original portion of the building, including painting of the existing wood trim, reconstruction of the existing front patio. That also includes the removal of the chain link fence. And then alterations to the rear mid-20th century addition. These include revised roof edges at the rear to align with the front portion of the house, a revised roof profile of the lower addition to match the pitch of the main building, as well as installation of metal roofing to match. Installation of skylights, a new west deck, the removal of an existing picture window at the second story and bay window on the first story on the west facade, which would be replaced with some glazing at the rear. The removal of an unsympathetic brick infill, glass block, and doorway addition on the east side to be replaced with siding beginning mid-facade, a horizontal window, and vertical wood siding towards the rear. The alterations also include the replacement of the existing fencing between the neighboring property and as well as at the front, and installation of 3 vertical windows, vertical wood siding, and a rear porch with a balcony leading from the second story above, as well as renewed landscaping throughout the property. So this property is designated under Part 5 of the Heritage Act in the Village of Berryfield District. This plan was recently updated and approved in 2016. The property has historic value as a typical example of a vernacular frame construction, representative of the late 19th century construction by the Allen brothers. The building's architectural defining elements include its 1.5-story massing, front gable, rectangular plan, returned eaves, its 2-bay side hall facade, the frame construction, its rectangular window and door openings, as well as narrow horizontal cladding. This property also has contextual value due to its close setback and orientation to Regent Street. This application was circulated internally for review, and the departments have provided comments, preliminary comments based on the design. And this application was also circulated to the committee in advance of this meeting. And the applicant has made several revisions since the original concept. So the applicant is also here today to answer any questions. They have the intent to sort of recognize the character of this original home, but make the rear more usable for the owner. And so they're looking for suggestions from the committee at this point.
Thank you. And you'll see on page 13 of the addendum a rendering, an updated rendering with the description above.
So actually, I'd like to clarify. The applicant submitted several versions of this rendering, and staff had a preference for this, which included the extension of the horizontal wood siding at the second story, as well as some modifications to the horizontal roof section, and the change of the vertical wood siding, which was originally quite dark and now is significantly lighter. So I'd just like to draw the committee's attention to that.
I'm just looking at the picture in the addendum, and it's almost identical with the exception of a missing skylight. And the second story balcony in the package has a glass wall there on the side, but it's essentially the same as the photo you see up there, there's very little difference. Anyway, so questions from members of the committee, or I guess do we go to questions with a pre-consultation, James, or do we go straight to comments? Right, so this is a slightly different procedure, so you can just go ahead and make comments directly to the applicant's agent, suggestions of how to achieve the intent. Just take turns, and they can respond. If you like, we can have a bit of a conversation. So who would like to go first? Don. The applicant's agents are sitting beside you there, behind you.
Hi, hello again. I had the opportunity to visit the site with Mac Irvin a few months ago. Unfortunately, Mac's not here today, but generally we looking forward to a tremendous improvement in the rear of the house, which is certainly not very attractive at the moment. And certainly I'm pleased to recognize that you're responding to some of the suggestions in interactions with staff and the committee. In the latest version, certainly an improvement in the west windows in that sort of sunroom thing. I think that's much better. I guess, I don't know whether there are other changes that you have been thinking about, but I guess I have two questions. I'm still concerned about the glass sort of fencing at the rear upper deck. That material is, I think, not really recommended in the Berryfield area. Why not a plain wooden picket kind of fence around there? And the other question, the main question, is what's going to happen on the east front? There's a chimney which is not original, not very attractive. There was a proposal, I think, to cover it with metal, which isn't really, I think, desirable either. And the sort of modification, well, again, the windows on the ground floor there are really not, don't really harmonize very well. I think the single window that's above below the existing window up above should kind of match it in size and maybe style to some extent. And also, the question is how is the chimney going to be handled within that sort of new addition there? So there's a couple of questions anyway. So,
do we go all at once? Sorry. The applicant's agent can respond right away to that first round of questions, if you like.
Yeah, so let's address the chimney thing first. There's a lower section on that chimney that's currently a brick facade that was done by the previous owner. Within the last 10 years, it's mortared onto to this lower half of that chimney. And the top section above that gable that you see is currently stuccoed, quite poorly done as well. We are open to the possibility of removing that chimney as it's not an original feature. Although from the street view, I guess we feel as though there is an element that chimney provides that kind of breaks up some of the lines of that facade that complement it in some way. But we're open to suggestions on how to move forward with that piece of it. To address the question in regard to windows in that lower section to the rear, the reason why we've proposed the windows as such is because that's a kitchen in the interior part of that part of the addition, and in order to create some good natural light in that kitchen, in that back section, the only way to create that light is through windows that will be between upper cabinets and lower cabinets within the kitchen. So as the designer felt like that was the best way to address some of that lighting issue in there. if I guess we could look at the options of maybe breaking up those windows just so that it's maybe not so linear, although that is a design feature that the designer felt was appropriate. As far as the rear second-story deck goes, so there were some changes made there, obviously, to bring that white siding on the second half back further to kind of tie in and complement the original siding features of the front section of the house. That is the original historical section. The owner felt as though the glass would really complement that and complement the view, I guess, into the backyard, which also features an original barn. And more of an aesthetic thing and personal preference, I guess that's the reason for that glass section.
A note on that glass, that on the picture that's in the package has the glass on the side as well, but up here the cladding extends and the glass is only on the rear. Okay, so the way we're doing this is each member has one opportunity to speak, and then we move on to the next member. So Paul, you're next.
This may be for staff or fellow committee members. Don't we have a policy that if there's a new addition, it is supposed to be highlighted as actually a different addition, that roofing would be broken, like the top of the roof would be broken, so it'd be maybe down a different level, not enough to change the flooring plans or anything, but just so it's notched down. Am I wrong? I thought they always had to have it.
Staff, or maybe Mackenzie could address what it says in the Bearfield plan about additions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul, you're correct. There is that policy in the plan for new additions. However, this section of the house is already existing, so they would be not changing the pitch. Yep.
Maybe I'm confused because in the pictures it looks like the dark roof at the top. If you look at the original one, that roof actually ends. And then okay, go back one more. Oh. Keep going. More. That might show it, that picture there.
Yeah.
No, the other one, sorry. We'll go with that one.
Okay.
That dark section does not looks like an add-on to the original roof. The original roof is the lighter section, and if I look at the original picture of the house, it ends at that lighter section. So this is a new addition? No, am I wrong? Yeah, it seems to end right at that with that little triangle, and then the new addition sort of goes from there. Am I wrong or am I correct?
So my understanding is that this section is not changing, and maybe the applicant can confirm, but just that this portion would be lifted to match this piece. Is that correct?
I can speak.
So just press your button to turn your mic on.
I turned it off. If you look at page 309, there's the middle picture gives a really good idea as it looks now. So that is an addition. That is the addition that we believe is about the 60s. And you can see that the addition's roof line is about a foot higher than the original home's roof line. The architect has designed the new addition in such a way that the new roof line will match, giving a better line of sight from the street view. It just looks nicer that way. As it stands now, the 60s edition looks quite shabby. It's got a single pane giant window in there that's highlighted, and it's pretty clearly a different kind of siding. As it's designed now from the street view, when you look down the side of the house, especially with the new cladding on one side of the patio glass, it makes it kind of look as if it was designed to mesh nicely with the historical side, but also clearly new architecture involved in the design.
Excuse me, Peter. So I'd just like to clarify, thank you, sir. The dotted line is 60s, right? Okay.
Thing right of the dot.
But then your new addition will actually match the original house. And my clarification is, should that not be notched down just a little bit, just to show that it is a new addition, even though you're replacing, or is this a new addition attaching to the right of the 60s addition?
No, the proposed addition on the concept drawings is replacing what we're looking at there. It starts at the line. We were under the understanding that we should actually try to match the roof lines. So if that's something that is different, then we were misled in that we thought that we should try to mesh the roof lines. So that was given to the architect purposely like that.
Thank you, sir. So could staff clarify what they need to do? They were told they should match the roof lines from old to new, but I thought we had a policy that has to be a little different. And I think the proposal's good, but I just want to make sure the policy is followed.
Yeah, so the staff has already responded that the plan does mention that additions should be clearly demarcated from the original, but this is a pre-existing structure that is being replaced. So does that mean that the language in the plan does not apply, or how did we end up with this roof line, I guess is the question.
I think if you
Don, did you know?
If you compare the diagrams on page 311 and 312, you can see that the ridge line is not changing. And, you know, there are changes below the ridge line, but that 311 is the existing ridge line that includes, a previous addition, and that length of ridge is not changing. So I think the point is we probably can't insist that they lower a roof line that's already there. If it was new construction, then yeah, it would apply, I think, that it should be lower. But that ridge is remaining the same, I understand.
Maybe I'm confused. I think 311, if you look at 311, where the number 5 points that little window, that point where the ridgeline stops, that's the height now. Then 312 actually shows that the ridgeline matches the original house dotted line over. So I still think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I still think it needs to go down if we're following policy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can clarify the policy with the applicant, review it further, but it was my understanding that it's a little bit of a complicated application because the addition is already existing. So do we treat it as a new construction or a new addition? But it's something that we can definitely discuss further about how to process this.
Thank you, Mr. Newman.
I'll just add to Mackenzie's comment. So just to clarify, so there is a policy in the plan that says the ridgeline of new additions shall be lower than the ridgeline of the existing structure. In this particular case, the ridge is the peak. So the ridge, as Mr. Taylor pointed out, is not changing. It's just kind of the flanking on the ends where there's a difference in height. It's tough to see from the photos, but on 311 and 312, I think that's clear. The peak of the roof itself is between the original and 1960s addition is actually, there's no difference in the peak. But I think the point here, the heritage conservation and the best practices is to, in some way, have the new being distinguishable from the current. So we will look to instill that in what's what's brought forward. The challenge with Berryfield specifically is the plan itself is really detailed as it relates to material choice. And so we are having some ongoing conversations with the applicant about choosing the right materials as they relate to how you distinguish between the old and new. So the plan is not all that sympathetic to glass, so we're trying to wrap our head around how can we distinguish old and new and use materials that are in line with the expectations of this plan.
Okay, this will be your last time to comment on this file. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure we get it right because I know how particular Berryfield zone is, and I hate to have the applicant do all the work and then someone say, if I caught it, maybe someone else will, and someone say, well, this is the policy, why can they do it that way? So I just wanted to bring that up. So.
Yeah, so the conversation will continue with staff. The plan does not state that that when doing alterations, applicants are required to lower an existing roof line. It does not state that. Okay, who else would like to? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Schell.
Thank you. I remember the very detailed discussion we had about private realm and public realm, and I think that the proponents have done a wonderful job overlaying, you know, how the house will look from the street, where you'd have to sort of peek around corners to see the addition, which is quite modern. So it wouldn't be allowed in the public realm. But I agree with Paul. We've been around long enough to know that I'm sorry that our member from Berryfield has gone, that being involved with the Berryfield Association is a good idea, because comments come all of a sudden, and we're never quite sure when or how. So, and I don't, it's interesting, we recently had something on Green Bay Road that, you know, I kind of asked the Berryfield Association to make their comments sooner than later, because it makes life a lot easier if the people who are directly involved in Berryfield comment and discuss early on with applicants, so that we, as Paul has brought up, there is sort of the letter of the law with Berryfield and the district heritage designation, and some people are very keen that the letter of the law be fulfilled with Berryfield. So we're trying, as Patricia talks about, do this balance, but it's good for you to get all the conversations going early, so that we all don't wind up in another month or two finding out the letter of the law of the Berryfield Heritage District hasn't been followed, and that we try to, staff arbitrate this. So it's a suggestion, because it is modern on the back, and people could start discussing it with you. Better to start the conversation now. Thanks very much.
Yeah, there's a danger that after the work is done, people that know the Berryfield plan will suggest that that not knowing that it was a pre-existing addition from the 60s, because it would be impossible to tell after the work is done, that they might suggest that you haven't followed the plan. So that's just something to be aware of. You might want to read the section in the plan about roof lines so that you know what it says. Peter.
Thank you. In the addendum that we were given today is repeated a principle which was also in the original application or the original material, having to do, and other people have spoken to this, I'm going to speak to it a bit more specifically perhaps, distinguishing the heritage part of the building, the character of that from the rest of the building, and in that sense, the last statement in the addendum we got today on page 12, given these incongruities, we request that this portion of the building not be deemed heritage to allow for the necessary improvements to renovate, etc. Well, I think that is a reasonable request, but what is not consistent with that, I think, is the cladding that is proposed around the chimney. Now, we've been told this morning that they might take that chimney down, but on page 318 and page 319 and I might say that side of the building is not shown in any of the materials we've got today. But in the original documentation on page 3, 18, and 19, you can see that is part of the heritage building. That chimney is set just before the original building ends, as I understand it, and the cladding that is proposed for that, as shown in these pictures, I think needs reconsideration because it is not consistent with the heritage character of the original building. And I appreciate the effort that they say they're making to be consistent, and also with the notion that the newer part should be cut a bit of slack within limits. But the proposal for the chimney I find very jarring, and so I raise the cladding of it. I think is just blatantly inconsistent with the principle which I regard as reasonable, which they have otherwise outlined. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just a few comments in regards to that. I've spoken a bit about the chimney already. So you're correct in that it is part of the original section of the house. The previous owner did some personal alterations and renovations to the house, including to that chimney section. So what's currently there is not an original feature in any way. It's been done within the last 10 years, and it is an eyesore to say the least.
May I add an editorial comment to that? It seems to me you're replacing one eyesore with another, and that's not the idea.
Okay, so your point has been made to be careful about what method is used to rectify the situation around the chimney. Did staff have something to add to that?
I was just wondering if the applicant could just confirm the material for the chimney. I was under the impression that it's not going to be metal, it will be parged. And also the section, this section currently has the very modern looking glass block, as well as a door that had been added later as well. So this section is part of the original section of the house, but it's actually a modern addition as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to speak to that, the materials being used. The lower half of the chimney is wood, as has been modified. The original submission kind of for the for his proposal was that was metal, but now that has been changed. That lower section will be wood, and the upper section, like I said earlier, we're open to the idea of removing that. It is currently stuccoed. If anything, if it did stay, I think maybe we would look to improve the current stucco job because it's quite shoddy. But we are not looking to propose that section be cladded in metal.
Okay. Any further comments at this time, Sherman?
Thank you. I think, too, it is a great improvement. I have just a couple of concerns with respect to meeting the requirements of the plan, and that's, I understand that the ridges work, they're compliant. The overhang, though, I'm concerned about the roof overhang on the lowered section that is, it appeared to be built barn-like. It's visible on the 13 of the amendment, page 13 of the amendment. Well, yeah, I believe it is still the same image. But yeah, so my concern is little to no overhang on the roof of the lower one-story addition in the rear. Also, I would be in favor to see the chimney be restored, even if parged. And I'm concerned about the siding on the existing. I understand. It appears that the horizontal siding is going to be continued on the second story or half story of the second. I'm concerned about the vertical siding on the single story rear extension. To look too barn, and the reference is to be barn-like. I would rather it not look too barn-like because it is part of the house. That is my concern about the finishes. The siding may be better. There may be a better choice.
I guess one thing that keeps coming up is this kind of idea that in some way we're supposed to really distinguish between the old and the new. And it seems like some of the suggestions for material choices have been that we kind of complement or use very similar to the old section. And I think what the architect or the designer has tried to do is really kind of use different materials in a different style to really distinguish the two sections. Not so that it doesn't complement the original historical section, but to kind of distinguish between the two.
And that is what is written in the plan as well, as long as it's achieved. Yes, Sherman?
And to one of my original comments was about the manner of which it is presented. I guess that the fear is that what is new stands out too much, then would be in contrast to the existing, and probably the vertical siding would not be problematic if it was the same shade and didn't stand out as much. In the renderings, they tend to stand out, and my fear is that the addition doesn't stand out so much, and I think that's the object of the use similar materials so that it doesn't stand out. Maybe they won't if they're similar color, but I also have a concern with respect to the district plan that does refer to drainage and roof overhangs and whether you can actually have a roof that isn't self-draining and could possibly be problematic without overhang to protect the siding. That might be in contrast to what the plan suggests. I'm also concerned about the skylights that are added to the roof. That is contrary to what the plan suggests, that skylights cannot be added to a visible surface. And I would propose that this west elevation is visible. The change is proposed for the front corner window to be larger. Again, there's a question as to whether this side is visible or not, but the plan does say to visible facades. So the skylights on the existing, the two proposed are on I would propose the visible side, and the change of that window is a visible side to the original structure, and I would propose that that is not consistent with the plan, as well as the addition of the window that was proposed. It's not shown on the latest rendering, but it appears a window is going to be added to that front corner on the east side as well. That is not existing. That too is contrary because that corner is very visible from street. That window, I'm calling this the west elevation. On the east elevation, there is a similar window that does not exist that is being proposed. Yeah, in a revised drawing, there's a window in that corner. I don't know whether that's still proposed, but there appears to be, and where is it? Page 333. At any rate, the concern is about altering the heritage building and adding skylights to roof that is showing that is street side, as well as the two corners that are street side.
To address some of those concerns about windows. Yeah, on page 332, you can see the east elevation with the proposed window in the front. On the west elevation, there's currently a small window there that we are proposing that we increase the size of. That window was also installed probably within the last 10 years. So yes, it is part of the historical section of the house, but it's not original. In fact, none of the windows in there are original. They've all been replaced and poorly replaced. They all need updating as they've been very poorly done. The west elevation skylight, those are not the two skylights at the front. Both of those are not proposed. The one is currently there. Also, previous owner installed one of those two skylights within the last 10 years, and the designer proposed that we add another one to complement that. We're actually okay with removing the proposal to add the second one, but the one skylight that is currently there will remain.
Okay, so I guess that's it for the pre-consultation for today, and we look forward to seeing the work as it progresses. You are free to contact staff at any time, as I'm sure you've been in contact with them already, to go over the various details and the context of the plan. Ultimately, when the permit comes to us, we will be judging the application against what it says in the district plan and recommending to council whether we support your proposal or not. But it's, again, council's decision. All right, so that's that business item. Thank you very much. Working group reports, you'll see them on page 339 of your package. Cultural Heritage Working Group and Heritage Assets Working Group. There's no report from Heritage Properties Working Group this time. So with one motion, we can approve all the working group reports? Oh. Okay, so we're doing one at a time. Cultural Heritage Working Group report. We need a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Paul. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And then
there are two recommendations in the Heritage Assets Working Group report on page 342 and 343. The one recommendation deals with artifacts associated to the Tragically Hip concert, and the other recommendation is for a frame commemorative print of the Kingston Olympic sailing competition.
So the way that we deal with those then is we make a recommendation that council accept them, is that it? So you'll see on the bottom of 342 and near the top of 343, the HAWG recommendations. So we can vote on both recommendations as one. So we would be recommending, the Heritage Committee would be recommending the council do this. You see that's the wording that's in there, that Heritage Kingston recommend to council to accept the Tragically Hip lamppost banner and t-shirt currently owned by the City of Kingston Civic Collection, and that Heritage Kingston recommend to council to accept one frame commemorative print 1976 Kingston Olympic sailing competition for the Civic Collection. So the one motion would cover both those recommendations. I need a mover. Patricia, seconded by Sherman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. And now we need a motion to accept the working group report of the Heritage Assets Working Group. Moved by Paul, seconded by Patricia. All those in favor? And that carries.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Yes, Paul.
May I ask the indulgence of the committee, because the assets group actually has some stuff in here about First World War, we do know that this is Vimy Ridge this Sunday. Could we possibly have a moment of silence for the 3,600 people that died and the 10,000 casualties? Is that I know this is an addition to the agenda, but I'm just wondering if that's a possibility.
Yes, why don't we conclude the meeting before we adjourn with that concept as a type of other business, I guess. Just following the agenda, we are at working group reports. Hang on. Update regarding emergency approvals. There are none. There are no motions, no notices of motion. There is one item of correspondence in the original package, and there's someone here too. And the correspondence in the addendum. And then before we adjourn, Paul has asked for a moment of silence for the Canadians who died at Vimy Ridge for the commemoration on Sunday. So we'll do that now. Thank you. So the next meeting is May 3rd at 9:30 a.m. Need a motion to adjourn. By Peter, second by Don. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. See you next month.